Hi, we're Board Game Opinions. My name's Steve Rain.
I'm Jonathan Hicks.
And I'm Mark Windle.
And we're going to take you through a spoiler-free review of Pandemic Legacy Season 2, which we've just finished playing. In this video, we are not going to tell you anything more than the general gist of the game and what you're confronted with in the prologue or the demo game that you get right at the start.
Yeah, so what you get from reading the rules, effectively.
I think you can play it multiple times. I advise you to if you want to get used to it. So it's not a case you can just have to play it once.
And the back of the box indicates, so when you look at the box initially, you are confronted with a world map, but it's not the world. It's only a tiny fraction of the world. You are confronted with, effectively, you as players are stuck on these havens which are in the middle of the ocean, and you have a fraction of the world, parts of Europe and Africa and North America that you can get to, and that's it. You start the game with about 9 cities, and the way this is different to regular Pandemic is you're not treating diseases. You are establishing like supply routes to cities that you're trying to support on the mainland, and rather than them getting diseases and you going on curing them, is you give them enough supplies so they don't get diseased.
Yeah, so when the diseases arrive, they kind of cancel the supply cubes that you've put there, rather than the cubes arrive and then you try and pull them off. So yeah, it seems to turn it on its head a little bit, but I really like that mechanism.
I think that's
refreshing.
One of the biggest strengths of the game for me was that it isn't just Pandemic. It's turned it on its head. You're doing the opposite thing round. You are putting cubes out so that you don't run out, rather than taking cubes away until you have too many. And you've got to be very careful as well, because it's very hard to get rid of the plague cubes once they appear.
Yeah, indeed.
And once normally in Pandemic you can have 20 or 30 cubes on the board. Here, as soon as you get 8, you lose. It's one of the conditions.
You're essentially like delivering paracetamol around the world, because it's not antibiotics. It won't get rid of it. It's just a preventative.
And clearly, in a legacy game, the exploration part of this, you can clearly see that you have a fraction of the map, but there's a lot of space in the world, empty space. So you can clearly work out that you're going to have to explore.
Yeah, I mean, it says on the board right up at the start,
yes.
you know, you have to go here, you take an action with so many cards, and that explores. And you can see when you look at the board, because you have like a big board, and only a tiny bit of it you can actually play on to start with. There's a lot of, you're putting sort of stickers on to reveal various sections of the board.
There's lots of obviously A, B, C and D, but to reveal additional things as the game goes through.
I mean, like Season 1 really, you get lots of stickers and the envelopes to open and boxes full of components potentially to open. There's all kinds of interesting things you can open as you go through.
And it carries on from Season 1. It's set about some number of years in the future. I don't know if I'm allowed to say specifically how many, but
it's like 50 years or so.
Yeah. And so if you've played Season 1, there is a continual story arc. I didn't play Season 1, but Mark was able to kind of inform me effectively how it carries on from there, and it leads on pretty well. In terms of what Jonathan says, the game is pretty tense. Like, we found that nearly every game we were straining and brain straining our way through at the end of the game, that we thought we only just had an fraction. So I think as a game it's very well balanced.
It's super tight.
Yeah.
Cooperative puzzle, which you are just, I mean, the number of times we were on that edge between winning and losing, which is well balanced.
You play the game over a year, effectively. Each month you're playing a new game, and it just develops the story. But yeah, it does, particularly towards the second half of the year, we found it just became so tight. We were spending an awful lot of time thinking over every single action any one of us took.
Trying to maximise the best possible thing.
Yeah.
So if this goes here, or you get here and do this, you might be able to stop this bad thing from happening, but what about this other bad thing that might happen? And it's like, and it's just so tense. I mean, it's exhausting, I found. Towards the end of those last few games, I was so tired after each game, because there's so much intense thought going into it, which might be a positive or might be a negative, depending on what you like.
I think for you it's a slight negative. For me it's a major positive. I think, you know, in terms of me reflecting on this in a year or two's time, I'm going to think, yeah, that was still pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, that's the main thing. It's going to be memorable, and also when you failed, it made you want to immediately, even when you're super stressed, I wanted to jump straight back in and reset the board up, and that's a huge positive.
Component quality, should we talk briefly about that?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I think the bits you get and the things that obviously you won't see at the start are generally good. They fit very well.
Nice sculpts, no complaints really.
And the stickers stuck on pretty good. And in terms of like them fitting together and you're not mis-sticking them, it was pretty easy to kind of make everything fit the way you needed to fit, and it didn't feel like, oh, I've stuck that in the wrong place, now it's ruined. anything like that.
My only real complaint with the components is there are various parts when you're scratching things off to reveal things.
Like a scratch card or something.
Yeah, exactly. But the little sort of silver dust, if you like, that comes off just went everywhere. It was a nightmare. We'd try and do it over a bin, but you just found it was getting all over your hands, and suddenly you're picking up the components, and it's good everywhere. You're trying to brush off this silver dust off everything. That was the only thing I didn't like, but the rest of it is absolutely fine.
And in terms of an experience that you'll get, we found at the end of the game there was a lot of things we didn't even get to look at. We chose to do one thing rather than another thing, so any sort of experience you're going to have with this game is going to be completely different to the experience that we've had.
I like the story in it. There's various bits of sort of thematic writing, if you like, that you're reading out cards and things, providing some stories that goes through it. Much as it did with Season 1, the story does feel quite different from Season 1. I don't know what you thought about that. It was refreshingly new. I really liked the kind of post-apocalyptic setting that they put it in, and whether or not you like or dislike that may affect how much you're going to engage with the theme. But personally, I was, really on board with it.
The story linked well with the exploration. You did feel like the almost fog of war, because you felt so at the beginning so in tight, and as the game went on, everything became bigger and more stressful and more plotty.
I like the fact that when you clearly see, we're not going to succeed this month, that you can do something permanently to the board or do something permanently to the exploration side of things, that it's going to make the next attempt at the same month easier. And I really like that. We're like, guys, we're just going to take a hit here. We're going to fail this month, but we're going to do it in such a way that we improve our chances next time. And I really like that.
It doesn't feel like all your work is in vain when you lose a month, because you're still accomplishing things each month. The way the system works is if you get 2 chances effectively to win a particular month. So if you fail the first half of January, you get a second chance for January, but if you fail the second one, then you just move on to February at that point. So it's not too punishing if you lose. We should also perhaps just talk about the catch-up mechanic, shouldn't we? There's various ways in which, if you start losing, it adds helpful things into the game to make it easier effectively. And they do really make a big difference. But if you start doing well, these helpful things are gradually removed.
Reduced until you have none of them.
That's right, and you feel like, how are we going to possibly succeed this? And we did have a string, didn't we, in the middle in terms of our campaign, where we won several games on the trot, and it just got to the point where
help went.
We had nothing.
We the last month, we started the month with no help, so we really struggled with the last month. So
it was tough.
But you're going to get to a point at any point in the game where you succeed a few times in a row, you're going to get that. And that's just a really nice balancing mechanism of the game. It differentiates to the ability and the current success rate that you've done in the game. If you're doing not so well, you're going to have loads of help and you're going to start to do well again. So that's really nice for a game that if you just get unlucky, you don't feel like the game's punishing too relentlessly.
Yeah. It gives you a score at the end, so once you finally complete the entire campaign, based on the various things that you did and the sort of state of the board at the end, you tot up your score and see how well you did, and there's like text.
Have you saved humanity? Have you saved yourself? Based on if and when you did certain succeeding things.
I feel like we didn't do as well as good. I felt like we were doing quite well as we went through the game. But by the end, you sort of see these are the scores you could have achieved. Like, we didn't do so well then.
But overall, guys, what would you? Well, first of all, comparing this to Season 1, if you've played Season 1 and you want to try this out, what would you think? Because I haven't played Season 1. What do you guys have to say about comparisons?
Personally, I much preferred this to Season 1. I wasn't expecting to. And when we started playing this, I was a bit like, I don't know if I really want to play this, to be honest. I feel like I've done Pandemic Legacy now, having done Season 1. But this feels different enough. I mean, it really does feel very different. It's very refreshing. And in terms of the mechanisms, the tenseness, how much it engages with you, I had a much more enjoyable time playing this overall, I think.
For me, I enjoyed this game better, but I enjoyed Season 1's plot better. But I think that's a much personal opinion. You say the post-apocalyptic feel of this will just be more suited to other people.
Now, it's very hard to quantify this, because I think 3 players was a very good number to play this game with. Now, you played Season 1 with 2 players, and you've played this with 3 players. Can you have any comments about kind of player numbers, and does it make it better or worse?
I think I enjoyed playing with more people because I think there's more ideas and it's played about more. 2 players, I think we end up playing it as 2-2s, which is often the recommended way of doing it. So having 2 characters each. So essentially it was like playing with 4. I think because this is a cooperative puzzle, I enjoyed the thought between each of the players, and
it's nice bouncing ideas at people.
We didn't have too much like quarterbacking going on, anything like that. It was all we were all throwing in ideas, and when we kind of worked out what's the best we believed to do.
No one ever said this is what I'm going to do. It said this is what I'm thinking of doing, and as long as someone else agreed with it, you're like It was very nice to have like that odd person. So it's like, you have 2v1.
Yeah.
We say, here's the 2 ideas. I've got an idea. Mark's got an idea. Which one does he prefer?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Or so you got a third one, then we kind of do that. So we didn't get into any sorts of arguments. So I thought 3 players was a very nice number.
Yeah, I played season 1 with 4 players, and again, I think I preferred this. I think you talked about this before, Steve, but in terms of how often the turns are coming round, it feels easier to plan, essentially. With 4 players, it feels like you have your turn with your particular character who has certain special abilities, and it's quite a long time before that character comes back.
Change by the time it
That's
get
right.
back to you.
You can specialise certain characters, and that character is going to be very good at doing things once every 3 turns. And it felt like that was a very nice length to come back to your character, so that you can do those things very quick. If you're the guy who does this one thing very well, but you're only going every 4 turns, then you're probably not going to make the best use of that, and kind of topping up that character with all these different kind of upgrades you can do.
The other thing I should perhaps talk about here is, you obviously at the start of the game you're picking a character, and there's a selection of characters you can choose from who have different special abilities, and how varied the different abilities are was really nice. You can clearly see some characters are much better at doing certain things than other things, and each game you can play with a different character. You could completely change every character if you wanted to from game to game, and that's really nice, and it allows you, depending on what the particular objectives are for the game you're playing, to pick the characters who would be most appropriate for that. And I really like that element of strategy, if like the variety it provided, it did it really well.
Yeah, I think we played maybe at most 5 people throughout the game, but every game we had to decide. It wasn't just like, let's pick our usual 3. It's like, well, we need him and we need her, and probably we don't need anyone else, so we'll pick her instead. That was very nice. So in terms of a rating out of 10, so we usually do this after we play games, what would you guys rate it out of 10?
So I thought it was really solid. As I say, enjoyed it more than season 1, which I really enjoyed anyway. I thought season 1 was very good. I'd be on a solid 8 out of 10 for this. The only reason it isn't higher for me is because of just how tense some of those games were at the end. I felt so exhausted. I was like, am I really enjoying it anymore? Because I'm just completely wiped out by the end of it. But it's a really well-made game. I think it's superb.
So I would be the opposite to Jonathan. I preferred how tense it was. I think, like I said before, when I look back at this in a year or two's time, I think, that was so good. Every game you feel drained, but I think that's a positive for me. So I'm going to rate it 9 out of 10.
I think I'd sit somewhere in the middle with 8.5. I think the main thing with this, and even with season 1, is that, as you say, for me anyway, is because I remember the story arc. I remember the good times, the bad times, the shocks, and I think that just creates good gaming for me. On to season 3.
Oh my god, I can't think of that. Anyway, so that's our review of Pandemic Legacy Season 2. If you like what we've had, what we said, we've all really enjoyed the game. I'd recommend you give it a go at some point. If you haven't tried Season 1, maybe do that first. But we've been Board Game Opinions. Thanks for watching.